staying motivated, I would say to definitely do some call blocks. Know, like, have a goal for every single morning of what you're looking to accomplish for the day, and just like breaking it up into call blocks so you can be extremely productive. And maybe you make 20 dials and you go and you get a snack, or you go hang out with your dog for 5 minutes. So I think that that's a great way to break it up.
Fantastic. And Sarah, do you normally like schedule your day when you're doing cold calls, or do you just kind of do it whenever you feel like it?
I mean, Adrian, it honestly depends on what my role is. When I was an SDR, I would swallow the frog. So I'd always do my cold call block first thing in the morning when I got to work. And then I'd do another one in the afternoon, because phones are the best way to get the answer that you're looking for, which is a yes or a no. So I always hit the phones. But as an account executive, my calendar is dictated by my meetings with customers and who I've got mid-funnel. So I spend a lot more time working through those deals, but I always have a goal in mind of how many calls I want to make every week. And if there's a big white space on my calendar, then it's going to get filled up with some dialing.
Let's be real. Cold calling, yes, it can be hard. It can be scary, but make it fun, right? And this is like a quick example of this is A/B split test. And what I mean by that is, like, if you're new into it, try different intros, see what's working, see what's not, right? But to your point, do 10 here, do 10 here, gamify it, make it fun. Because again, you're going to have to do this. You're going to do this regularly, right? Again, consistency is what, again, yields those ultimate results. But I love all of these motivating. I mean, there's definitely a number that I'm going to add into my arsenal, but this is awesome.
I'm glad we're talking about motivation here, because this kind of brings me into our next point. So let me go ahead and share my screen with you all, because when you see this, you're going to be like, ooh, the dreaded bad call. I'm sure you guys have all had bad calls. Let us know in the chat. Have you ever had a bad call? What was your worst call experience? I want to hear it. I'm sure there's some crazy ones out there, but how do you guys go about shaking off a bad call? Maria, I know you had some good points on this.
Taking off a bad call. Oh, I think from shaking off a bad call, I like to listen to music, like just really like 90s hardcore rap, and just like get in the zone and be like, okay, I felt bad for myself for 3 seconds and now I'm going to get back to it. So that's one way to do it. We actually have like a channel in Slack at Revenue of just like horrendous cold calls that we all inevitably make. And I think that that's always good to go back to as well, just like hearing, okay, this happens to everybody. And even our best enterprise rep, who has made, thousands, I'm sure, of cold calls, just listening to him fumble every now and then, that's kind of a fun thing to do. And like, it makes you not feel so alone, because it happens to everybody. And the second thing I'll say is really just like I think Josh Braun says, it's of like detaching from the outcome. Everybody's going to have a bad day at some point of who you're calling. Maybe they're they just spilled coffee on themselves and they just picked up the phone after that, or just something bad happened to them, and you kind of could take the brunt of that. You don't have control over that. So that's one of the things that I try to instill in our SDRs is like, know what's in your control and not within your control. And as long as you execute on those things that are in your control to make it a good call, then the rest is a little bit out of your hands, and you can't let it impact you in that way.
Yeah,
completely agree. And Shelly, what were you going to say?
Oh, no, I was just going to, I mean, there's so many thoughts on this, right? And everybody operates a little bit differently. Self-reflection is a really big thing here, right? Why did that bad call happen? And by the way, I'm only giving personal experiences, personal examples when I say, early on in my career, still to this day, I get bad calls, but I got so many more before. And you have to go back and again, self-reflect. What did I do? What could I have done better? And again, maybe it starts as little as like, what was my introduction? If I'm calling and I'm like, hey, this is Shelly calling over at JB Sales, wouldn't you hang up on that? And so there is some merit to be said about go online, go check out what are powerful introductions versus weak introductions. So again, that reflection of, okay, is it me? Let's just take it off of our tendency is to say, oh man, this person was terrible. This person just didn't want to talk to me. This person was so angry. Sure. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It does. Right. But let's just change course for a second. How could I have done it differently? This is where you start to play with things. So I think self-reflection is really, really big here.
Yeah,
It's
and
very
sometimes
true.
you don't hear that until you listen back to the call and you're like, wow, I sound like I'm hunched over at my desk and like just like lacking energy altogether. Like maybe I need to stand up from now on and like make that just one quick adjustment and it'll do so much for you. So I'm with you on that. But sometimes people are just not very nice.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, you've got to practice being uncomfortable. When somebody hangs up on you, I'm a big believer of pick up the phone and go to the next one, even though you don't feel good, even though something bad happened. Another story. Yesterday, I got a phone call from a prospect that I'm working a deal with, and he was very, very upset with me because there'd been some miscommunication on my team, and the SDR that I was working with had reached out to other people at his company, even though he'd asked us not to do that. And so he was like, I'm going to look bad. The deal's not going to go well. This is bad. He called me really angry. He called me 10 minutes before I was having a 45-minute introductory call with someone totally different. And because I practiced being uncomfortable and I've had experiences where people have been mad at me, I was able to shift focus and go into that meeting 10 minutes later without being totally jostled and screwed up and thinking constantly about that bad thing that happened. Did it pop into my brain a couple times? For sure it did, but I kept revisiting, going back to what was right in front of me. But I bet there's a bunch of people on the call who are thinking, you know what, Sarah, Maria, Shelly, it's great. I can detach. You keep saying detach yourself from the outcome, and I'm trying, but I don't really know how to do that. And I have a book for you if you want to read a book, or you can listen to it on Audible, but it's called it's a David Burns book. It's called Feeling Good, The New Mood Therapy. And it's all about cognitive behavioral therapy. So a lot of people, myself included, we tend to think thoughts that make stuff a way bigger deal than it actually is. So we make the discomfort that we feel after a cold call goes badly, we make that into something way bigger than it actually is.
We overanalyze.
Exactly. We catastrophize. We make it judgments on ourselves. And we actually have to train our brains to think differently, to stop thinking that the feeling that I feel in this exact moment of discomfort equals reality and equals how everybody else sees me. And I think it's really, really important to practice. People who have actually just read this book, they don't even practice cognitive behavioral therapy or see a therapist for it, but people who just practice this or read the book, have found that they have been more successful, more confident, are able to overcome challenges. And it's used a lot with people who suffer from depression or other things, but it works with anybody. We can all shift the way that we think and start to sort of think about reality as reality, and that our feelings do not necessarily equate to what is going on in the world. So that's just a little tidbit that I think might be helpful for some of those people who are like, great, detach myself for the outcome. I can't.
I think I think, and I hope that it's safe to say that's the case for pretty much everything in life, right? I mean, to a certain extent, right? But like, and I think that was why we asked that question earlier, is like, what is your goal? Like, once you understand, like, what is the goal of your calls, right? That really helps. It helps you, again, it helps you dictate, what are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to accomplish? How are you going to do it? Right. I know when I think about the process for overcoming, when I think about cold calling and you just rejection and staying resilient, is for all my atomic habit fans out there, like that 1% better every day. Right. So again, my example, I love that Sarah keeps providing all these examples. I mean, look, I used to be, I was never a runner. And quite frankly, I'm still not a runner. Right. But I work out and I'm not trying to run 6 miles today. I can't. If it would take me 24 hours. Right. But what I'm doing is I'm walking. But then I started incorporating walk running. So 50% of my class is walking, 50% of my class is running. Then I can run a little bit longer. And so again, when you think about that, overcoming that fear, it's a process. So I love what, again, Sarah Maria said, okay, a lot of people posted in the chat earlier is like, what if we're just scared to get on the calls? You're not going to know until you do it. Mm-hmm. And by the way, what truly ask yourself, what is the worst thing that can happen? You get hung up on. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you stop going so fast on the phone? Because the other person is just getting all these words all of a sudden. How do you slow that down as a cold caller? Do you guys have any good tips for that?
I have that problem so much. I hear that on the other end and I'm like, ooh, they're super busy. I'm interrupting them. And then I start talking more fast. And I'm a very wordy person, as you could probably tell over the last 30 minutes we've been talking. One thing that I'm really working on is just to be more succinct and use less words, be more clear. And I think that if you take out, I'm not saying to have a per se like a cold calling script, but like if you try to reduce the amount of words you're saying versus speaking quickly, then that's gonna be really helpful. So I think be really intentional about the words that you're using and practice them over and over and over and think about how can I say this in less words instead of more quickly.
Great way to do that is just ask some questions, right? Ask clarifying questions. Mirror what they say. We don't have any budget, no budget. But that asking questions helps, and then you'll actually know what words to use when it's time for you to say the thing back to answer their question or to handle the objection. But if you start with a question, that often will reduce your talk time significantly and slow you down a lot.
And making sure that question is relevant to them, not a self-serving question either, right? Making sure that it's relevant. So for each of your persona types, it might be different. I think the other thing that you want to consider when you talk about, now I'm just like completely drawing a blank on the topic. What were we just talking about? What
Using less words.
Oh, how to slow down. See, look, we feel, a lot of us, especially when we're new, we feel so compelled and like obligated to just get the words out, right? But you can't do that because we're almost assuming that the person's going to hang up on us. Go in as if, again, it comes down to that preparedness, right? If you go in prepared, that powerful introduction that I was talking about earlier, right? It's about buying incrementally more time with your prospects, right? So when I think about, again, engaging, when I used to rush because I felt like, oh my God, if I don't say everything right now, they're going to hang up on me. When actually the opposite is going to happen. If I just start word vomiting, nobody's going to want to talk to me. But the questions are key, and the questions have to go back to who you're talking to.